Love in its purest form is meant to open our eyes, not blind them. Yet, for many women, love often becomes an illusion that hides more than it reveals. When emotions overpower reason, the heart starts to trust what the eyes should question. Many women fall for words over actions, dreams over reality, and promises over patterns. Not because they are weak, but because they are hopeful. They see love as something that can heal, fix, or transform the person they care about, even when all signs point otherwise. Emotional blindness in love is one of the most powerful forces that can distort perception. When a woman falls deeply in love, her emotions often become the lens through which she views the world, and especially the person she loves. Every word, every gesture, and every promise starts to carry more weight than it should. The heart begins to interpret small signs of affection as proof of devotion, even when actions say otherwise. This blindness doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process where emotions start to overshadow logic, and feelings become the only truth she trusts. The more emotionally involved she becomes, the harder it is for her to see things as they are. Because love, by its very nature, demands belief. At the beginning of a relationship, everything feels magical. The attention, the care, the excitement. This early phase often sets unrealistic expectations, convincing a woman that what she feels must be real, even if something feels off. Emotional blindness thrives in these moments because it feeds on hope and desire. When he forgets promises or fails to show consistency, she might excuse it as stress, bad timing, or misunderstanding. Her love makes her justify what she would normally question. This internal conflict between emotion and intuition often leads her to silence her inner voice, the one whispering that something isn't right. Love in this case becomes not a source of truth, but a filter that hides it. As time passes, emotional blindness becomes more dangerous. The woman begins to mistake attachment for love and routine for happiness. She may start believing that enduring pain or disappointment is simply part of loving someone deeply. When confronted by friends or family about the warning signs, she might defend the relationship fiercely, not because she doesn't see the flaws, but because she can't bear to admit she was wrong about him. The fear of shattering her own belief in the relationship is often stronger than the pain she endures within it. Emotional blindness isn't just about not seeing the truth, it's about choosing not to, because facing it feels like losing the dream she built in her heart. Ultimately, emotional blindness is a form of self-deception born out of love's intensity. Women, by nature, tend to invest emotionally and wholeheartedly, giving love the power to redefine their perspective. They believe that love should conquer all, that patience and care can fix broken pieces. But this very belief can turn against them, keeping them trapped in illusions rather than reality. Emotional blindness robs women of their ability to evaluate relationships objectively, leaving them caught between what they feel and what they know. Until they learn to balance emotion with awareness, love will continue to be a beautiful disguise for painful truths. From a very young age, women are surrounded by stories that shape how they perceive love. Fairy tales, movies, and novels often portray love as a magical force that conquers all obstacles, where the flawed man transforms because of a woman's pure love. This kind of storytelling creates a deep psychological conditioning that influences how women approach relationships. They begin to associate love with sacrifice, patience, and the ability to change someone. Society rarely teaches women that love should also include respect, self-worth, and emotional balance. Instead, the message is often clear that a good woman never gives up on the man she loves, even if she is breaking inside. This conditioning becomes a silent teacher that blinds women to reality, making them believe endurance is a symbol of strength in love. This romantic conditioning also thrives through cultural expectations and gender roles. Women are often told that their ultimate success lies in being loved and chosen, rather than being fulfilled or independent. The pressure to maintain relationships, even toxic ones, can make women overlook their own needs just to fit into this idealized narrative of eternal love. Society glorifies the woman who waits, forgives, and endures. while labeling those who walk away as cold or heartless. As a result, many women internalize the belief that unconditional love means accepting pain and disappointment as part of the journey. This mindset prevents them from recognizing when love becomes unhealthy, making it difficult to see that real love should never require the loss of self-respect. Romantic conditioning also feeds on emotional dependency. When women grow up seeing love as a goal rather than a shared connection, they start defining their worth through the eyes of their partner. They begin to equate being loved with being valuable. This can make them stay in relationships that no longer serve them, constantly trying to prove their loyalty and patience. The idea that true love requires struggle becomes deeply ingrained, convincing them that pain is just another expression of devotion. This false belief keeps them tied to relationships that drain their energy as they try to live up to the romantic ideals they've been taught since childhood. What they fail to realize is that love should not feel like a test. It should feel like home. Furthermore, this conditioning blinds women to the reality that love is not a fairy tale. It's a choice and a partnership that requires equal effort from both sides. The dream of being the one who saves or changes someone becomes a trap that leads to heartbreak. Many women keep trying to rewrite someone's story instead of accepting who that person truly is. They confuse persistence with purpose and compassion with compromise. Romantic conditioning therefore becomes a quiet force that disconnects women from truth, making them chase an illusion rather than embracing reality. It teaches them to believe that love must always hurt before it heals. When in truth, love that's real should never require you to lose yourself to find someone else. False hope is one of the most deceptive emotions that can take root in a woman's heart when she falls in love. It begins subtly. She notices flaws, inconsistencies, or even moments of neglect. But instead of accepting them as warnings, she views them as temporary. Her love makes her believe that in time he will change, mature, or realize her worth. This false hope creates a powerful illusion that love alone is enough to transform someone. Women often see what could be rather than what is. They build a future in their minds based on glimpses of goodness, small promises, or rare affectionate gestures, even when those moments are few and far between. The potential of the man becomes more real to her than the man himself, and that is where the pain begins. This tendency to love potential stems from a nurturing instinct, a desire to heal, to inspire, or to help someone become their best self. Women are often drawn to the idea of being the reason someone changes, as if their love could be the spark that awakens the other person's hidden strength. However, this emotional generosity often turns into emotional labor, where she gives endlessly but receives little in return. The problem with potential is that it exists in imagination, not reality. When she is deeply invested, she starts ignoring the person standing before her and focuses instead on the version she's created in her mind. This illusion becomes her truth. And even when reality begins to contradict it, she clings to the hope that her love will eventually make everything right. As the relationship progresses, false hope grows stronger and more binding. Each time he disappoints her, she forgives, not because he deserves it, but because she's still holding on to the belief that change is just around the corner. She interprets small improvements or half-hearted apologies as signs of progress. This creates a cycle of waiting, believing, and being let down again. Her hope turns into a coping mechanism, shielding her from the heartbreak of accepting the truth. Deep down, she knows that the person she fell for exists only in her imagination. But letting go of that image feels like giving up on love itself. The emotional investment becomes so deep that reality begins to feel like betrayal, a betrayal of the dream she once believed in. Eventually, false hope can leave a woman emotionally exhausted and disconnected from her own reality. The more she clings to potential, the further she drifts from her own needs and happiness. She may begin to question herself, wondering if she is asking for too much or if she is the reason he hasn't changed. This self-doubt reinforces her dependency on the illusion she's built. False hope becomes a comforting lie she tells herself to avoid the painful truth that love cannot rewrite someone's character. It's a beautiful but dangerous delusion, one that convinces her to hold on long after the relationship has stopped giving her peace. And in doing so, she loses sight of what real love should feel like: mutual, balanced, and true. The fear of loneliness is one of the deepest emotional struggles many women face in love. It's not just about being without someone, it's about confronting silence, emptiness, and the unknown. When a woman invests her heart, time, and identity into a relationship, the thought of being alone feels unbearable. Loneliness begins to look scarier than unhappiness, and so she stays. She convinces herself that some love, even painful love, is better than none. This mindset traps her in a cycle of dependency, where comfort replaces connection and fear replaces clarity. Instead of walking away from what no longer serves her, she clings tighter, hoping things will change, so she won't have to face the void that comes after goodbye. This fear is often rooted in societal conditioning and personal insecurities. From a young age, women are taught that being loved validates their worth, that having a partner means they are successful in love and life. The absence of a partner is seen as a form of failure, as if being single reflects inadequacy. This pressure causes many women to tolerate relationships that drain them simply because they fear being labeled as alone or unwanted. They start to equate loneliness with rejection, when in truth, solitude can be a source of strength. But fear clouds that perspective, making them accept less than they deserve. Instead of realizing that peace is better than pretense, they choose the familiarity of companionship over the freedom of self-discovery. Loneliness also plays tricks on the heart by distorting memory and emotion. When a woman contemplates leaving, her mind often replays the good moments, the laughter, the affection, the shared dreams, while conveniently muting the pain, disrespect, or neglect. This selective memory gives her false comfort, making her believe that things could return to how they once were. The fear of being alone transforms into the hope of rekindling what's already gone. In this emotional tug of war, logic fades and she starts bargaining with herself, saying, maybe if I try harder, maybe this is just a phase. But deep down, it's not love that keeps her there. It's the fear of losing the familiar warmth that, even if false, feels safer than the cold of solitude. Over time, this fear of loneliness becomes a silent prison. It convinces women to remain in relationships that no longer nourish them, sometimes even toxic or abusive ones, just to avoid the pain of separation. They tell themselves they are strong for staying, but in reality, they are terrified of starting over. The thought of rebuilding a life, of sleeping alone, of facing judgment from others, becomes too heavy to bear. So they keep pretending, smiling, and hoping that love will somehow fix itself. Yet what they don't realize is that loneliness within a relationship hurts far more than being alone. Fear blinds them from seeing that the absence of love is not cured by its imitation, and until they confront that fear, they remain chained to the illusion instead of finding the truth that could finally set them free. Emotional investment is one of the strongest reasons why women fail to see the truth in love. Once a woman gives her heart, she doesn't do it halfway. She pours her time, energy, and emotions into nurturing the relationship. Every conversation, memory, and promise becomes a thread in the fabric of her attachment. Over time, these threads weave into something she can easily undo. Even when the relationship starts to fall apart, she begins to see the bond not just as love, but as a part of her identity. The more she gives, the harder it becomes to take a step back and evaluate things logically. Her investment blinds her to the fact that love, without balance or reciprocity, turns into an emotional burden rather than a blessing. In many cases, emotional investment leads to a powerful psychological illusion, the belief that because she's given so much, it must eventually pay off. She convinces herself that her loyalty, sacrifices, and patience will one day be rewarded. This is where love quietly transforms into attachment, a form of emotional debt she feels obligated to keep paying. Even when she's unhappy, she stays because she doesn't want to feel that everything she's done was for nothing. The idea of walking away feels like failure, like abandoning a project halfway through. But love isn't a project to complete, it's an experience to share. Unfortunately, when emotional investment becomes too deep, it chains her to a situation where leaving feels more painful than staying. Even if staying is what breaks her, this deep emotional bond often creates a distorted sense of responsibility. A woman might begin to feel responsible for keeping the relationship alive, even when her partner stops trying. She'll take the blame for the emotional distance, believing that if she just loves harder, communicates better, or forgives more, things will improve. Her empathy becomes her weakness, and her willingness to give endlessly leaves her emotionally drained. What makes it even more painful is that she often confuses endurance with love, as if staying through disappointment is proof of her commitment. The truth, however, is that real love should never demand the sacrifice of one's peace of mind. Yet, the more emotionally invested she becomes, the more her sense of reality fades behind her desire to make things work. Ultimately, emotional investment traps women in a painful cycle of hope and heartbreak. The longer they stay, the more they feel they can't leave because the relationship has consumed too much of their past and emotions. They start measuring love by the amount of pain they can endure rather than the happiness they receive. Each tear, each apology, and each temporary reconciliation becomes a reason to stay, not to go. They hold on to the memories of what once was, believing that the love they built can't simply vanish. But what they fail to realize is that emotional investment without mutual growth becomes a cage made of their own devotion. It's not love that keeps them trapped. It's the fear of losing what they've already given, even when what remains is only a shadow of what once felt real. Empathy is one of the most beautiful qualities a woman can possess. It allows her to feel deeply, connect genuinely, and understand the emotions of others with compassion. However, when empathy goes unguarded by boundaries, it becomes a dangerous trap. Many women are naturally inclined to nurture, to heal, to fix, and to understand, even when doing so comes at their own expense. They see pain in their partners and feel compelled to ease it, often forgetting that love doesn't require saving someone. This misplaced empathy makes them excuse hurtful behavior, rationalize lies, or forgive disrespect simply because they can see the reasons behind it. In their desire to understand others, they forget to protect themselves. And slowly their kindness becomes the very thing that blinds them to the truth. When empathy outweighs boundaries, women start accepting emotional pain as part of love. They believe that if they love hard enough, their compassion can change the other person's heart. So they stay when they should walk away. They comfort their partners even after being hurt by them, mistaking pity for love. This emotional imbalance often makes them carry the weight of the relationship on their shoulders alone. The man becomes the center of their emotional energy, while their own needs and happiness are pushed aside. This self-sacrificing love feels noble at first, as though they are being strong, patient, and loyal. But over time it turns into silent suffering. Their empathy, once a gift, becomes a burden that drains their spirit and hides the truth behind emotional exhaustion. Society often reinforces this behavior by glorifying selfless women. Movies, traditions, and cultural expectations tell women that true love endures everything. They are praised for staying, for forgiving endlessly, for putting others first. This creates an emotional pattern where women start believing that setting boundaries makes them cold or unloving. They silence their pain in order to maintain peace, thinking that compromise is proof of maturity. But in reality, boundaries are not walls. They are shields that protect emotional health. Without them, love becomes one-sided and empathy turns into submission. The more a woman tolerates disrespect under the name of understanding, the more she loses sight of her own worth. She begins to confuse compassion with tolerance, and in doing so, she allows herself to be diminished by the very love she's trying to preserve. Over time, empathy without boundaries erodes self identity. The woman who once gave out of love starts giving out of fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as selfish. She becomes emotionally drained, often feeling invisible in her own relationship. Her love turns into silent endurance, where she gives everything but receives little in return. She may even start believing that this kind of emotional sacrifice is normal, that love is supposed to hurt. But what she doesn't realize is that empathy without limits leads to emotional emptiness. It's a slow unraveling, where the woman who wanted to heal ends up being the one who needs healing. By loving without boundaries, she loses the ability to see the truth. That real love doesn't demand suffering, it flourishes where both hearts are equally valued, respected, and free. True love is often mistaken for an emotional whirlwind, something that overwhelms, consumes, and blinds. But in its purest form, love isn't meant to make you lose yourself. It's meant to help you see yourself more clearly. When women fall deeply in love, they often confuse intensity with authenticity. The racing heart, the constant longing, and the emotional chaos can feel like proof that the connection is real. Yet, love that burns too fiercely without balance can blur the line between passion and pain. Real love doesn't blind you to red flags or force you to silence your intuition. Instead, it sharpens your awareness and deepens your understanding. It helps you see both the beauty and the flaws, not through illusion, but through truth. The tragedy is that many women equate love with emotional chaos, mistaking its storms for sincerity. When a woman experiences true love, it brings peace, not confusion. But because so many are conditioned to associate love with struggle, peace often feels unfamiliar, even suspicious. They may feel uneasy when love is calm, fearing that something is missing because they've been taught that love must always be dramatic or hard-earned. This distorted perception makes them gravitate toward relationships filled with highs and lows, where emotional intensity replaces stability. They become addicted to the rush of fixing, forgiving, and chasing validation, believing it's passion. But true love doesn't require constant fixing, flows naturally, built on respect and mutual effort. It gives space for individuality rather than consuming one person for the sake of another. Clarity, not chaos, is the true mark of love. That's real. Seeing love clearly means understanding that affection and accountability must exist together. When women truly see with both their hearts and minds, they recognize that love without respect is not love at all. They stop justifying broken promises, stop waiting for change that never comes, and start measuring love by consistency rather than words. This kind of clarity only comes when emotional maturity replaces fantasy. It's not about expecting perfection, but about recognizing patterns. Knowing that someone who truly loves you will not make you question your worth. Love should illuminate, not confuse. It should encourage growth, not dependency. Yet so many women mistake loyalty for love, staying in darkness because they fear what will happen when they finally open their eyes to the truth. Ultimately, true love is not a dream, it's a reality built on emotional honesty. It doesn't demand blindness, it demands awareness. When women begin to see love not as something to endure, but as something to understand, they reclaim their power. Clarity allows them to love deeply but wisely, passionately but peacefully. It frees them from illusions and helps them recognize when a relationship nourishes them or destroys them. True love is not about losing yourself in someone else's world. It's about walking side by side in the light of mutual respect, honesty, and peace. Only when women learn that love is clarity, not confusion, will they stop mistaking pain for passion and see that the truth was never the enemy. It was the freedom they were always searching for. In the end, love is not meant to blind, break, or bind. It is meant to awaken. When women begin to look beyond illusions and see love for what it truly is, they rediscover their strength. Love is not a test of endurance. or a battlefield of sacrifice. It is a partnership built on trust, respect, and emotional truth. The moment a woman learns to love herself with the same intensity she gives to others, everything changes. She no longer settles for half-hearted affection or promises without proof. She no longer confuses attachment with devotion or silence with peace. True love begins when she realizes that her worth is not defined by who loves her, but by how deeply she understands herself. When women embrace this truth, they stop chasing illusions and start attracting what's real. They begin to see that love, in its purest form, doesn't dim their light. It reflects it. And that clarity, that awareness is where healing begins and where genuine love finally finds its home.